Hey guys, today what we're going to be doing is looking at the sums and difference of square roots. So it's essentially saying when can we add and subtract square roots. So let's go ahead and look at this. The rule is anything inside the square root must be exactly the same in order for us to add and subtract it. By looking at this one, it's pretty clear that radical 3 and radical 27 are not the same. So currently I cannot subtract these. But let's see if I can simplify radical 27. Well, two numbers that multiply to 27 are 3 and 9, and two numbers that multiply to 9 are 3 and 3. Therefore, I have a pair, and this would come out. So I have 12 radical 3 minus 5 times the 3 I just brought out, but let's not forget I still have this leftover 3 here. So this would give me now 12 radical 3 minus 15 radical 3. Now when it looks like this, I can add and subtract numbers out in front, I can add and subtract the numbers in front of the radical. So 12 radical 3 minus 15 radical 3, I just subtract these. 12 minus 15 is negative 3, and the radical stays the same. So negative 3 radical 3 is my final answer there. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the next one. This one looks a little trickier. If I had something that looked like this, 12x minus, 6y all over 3, I can only simplify these as long as both numbers, the 12 and the 6, are divisible by 3. The same is true for this one. So looking at this one now, currently I cannot reduce these. So what we're going to do now here is I'm going to look at radical 28 and see if I can break that down. And that's 7 and 4, and this is 2 and 2. So this radical 28 is really 2 radical 7 minus, and I'm going to look at this one now. Here I have minus radical 63. Two numbers that multiply to 63 are 7 and 9, and two numbers that multiply to 9 are 3 and 3. So then I'm going to have minus 3 radical 7 all over radical 3. Okay, so now looking at this one, I can combine the numerator of these two numbers. I'm going to have 2 minus 3, which is negative 1. And remember, the radical 7 stays the same. Now I still have this radical 3 on the denominator, and if we remember from the previous lesson, I can never have a irrational number at the denominator. So what I need to do is multiply the numerator and the denominator by radical 3, and that will give me negative radical 21, because 7 times 3 is 21, all over 3. Okay, so this would be my final answer right here. All right, so let's go ahead now and look at the next one. I have 2 radical 5 times 7 plus 3 radical 5. Radical 30. Now when we distribute this, you're basically going to distribute the whole number with the whole number, and you're going to distribute the radical with the radical. Now I want you to notice that the 7 doesn't have a radical, but there's an imaginary square root of 1 right there. So when I do 2 times 7, that is 14, and then radical 5 times radical 1 is just radical 5. And then I'm going to have the plus, and then we're going to have 2 times 3, which is 6. And then radical 5 times radical 30 is going to be radical 150. So currently I can't add these because they have different radicals. So let's go and break this radical 150 down and see what it simplifies to. I see 10 and 15. There's numerous other ones you can break it down to, but that's just what I see currently. So this would be 2 and 5. This would be 3 and 5. So I have a 5 in common. So this is going to be 14 radical 5 plus 6 times the 5 I just brought out. And what's left inside the radical is the 2 and the 3. So we're still not done. We need to simplify all this. This is going to give me 14 radical 5 plus 30 radical 6. Now I look inside my radicals and see if they're the same. If they're the same, I can combine them. If not, I'm done. So it's basically saying if I have 14x plus 30y, I cannot combine these two because the variables are different. Similar to this, if I cannot combine these because the 5 and the radical 5 and radical 6 are different. All right, moving on to the next one. This one looks pretty big and long, but it's not too crazy. First thing what I want to do is I have all of these numbers here. And what I want to do is simplify all my radicals. So I'm going to have 3/5, and then I'm going to have radical 60. So this could be 2 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 5. Okay, so I can take out this 2. So I'm going to have 3/5 times 2 over 1, and I have 3 times 5, which is 15. So radical 15 left over. So that simplifies even more. 3 times 2 is 6, 5 times 1 is 5, times radical 15. All right, so that's everything I did in orange. Let's move the colors to blue. So I'm going to have minus 2/5 radical 240. So let's break 240 now. So this could be 10 and 24. 10 is 2 and 5. This could be 8 and 3. This would be 4 and 2. This will be 2 and 2. So I'm only looking at these prime numbers, and I'm looking at every number I can take out. I can take out these 2's, and I can take out these 2's. So that would give me minus 2/5 times the first 2 I brought out times the second 2 I brought out. And what's left inside the radical is this 5 and this 3. So that would be radical 15. Okay? And this would then simplify to 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So that will give me 8/5. So I'm going to scroll this down just a little bit so we can see better. So orange, I had 6/5 radical 15. Here, 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So minus 8 over 5 radical 15. And we're going to go ahead and bring this back up, and we're going to solve for the last one. And I'm going to add radical 540. So similar idea, I have radical 540. I'm going to break this down. So this could be 10 and 54. 10 is 2 and 5. This could be 2 and 27, 9 and 3, 3 and 3. So one more time, I'm looking for all my prime numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm looking at just those numbers right there. So I notice I have a pair of 2's. I'll circle in purple. And then in purple, I have another pink. I have another pair of 3's. So that means I can take out a 2. I can take out a 3. And what do I still have left over? I have this 5 and this 3, which multiplies to radical 15. So now that means when I bring that all the way down here, I am going to be adding 6 radical 15. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is, since my radicals are all the same, remember you can determine if you're going to add and subtract the radicals, the coefficients, by looking at the radicals. They're all radical 15. Therefore, I can add and subtract these numbers. So in order to do that, these are just fractions. So I have 6/5 minus 8/5. So that would give me negative 2/5 radical 15 plus 6 over 1 radical 15. So what I did is I just combined these. Remember, when you add and subtract fractions, the denominators need to be the same. So now what I'm going to do is I need to have this 6 over 1 have the same denominator. It needs to be a 5. Therefore, if I multiply the top and the bottom by 5, this would give me 30 over 5 radical 15. Okay, and so I'm just going to add that to this one. Negative 2 plus 30 is 28 over 5 radical 15. And that's my final answer there. All right, last one for the day. What we're going to do is, I want you to notice this one's a tad different. Everything is inside the radical. Therefore, since everything is inside the radical, it's kind of like having parentheses around here. And inside the parentheses, can you add and subtract these? Well, I can. I can add and subtract them as long as my denominators are the same. They are not the same, but my least common denominator is 36c, which means I need to multiply this one, the numerator and the denominator, by 4. And on this one, I need to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 18. So that means I'm going to have the square root. 5 times 18 is 90. 18 times 2c is 36c. Minus 8 over 18c minus 1 over 36c. So now what I'm going to do is 90 minus 8 minus 1 is, so 90 minus 8 is 82, minus 1 is 91. And sorry, I stuttered because I noticed I made a mistake. This down here is not 18, it is also 36. Okay, so then I look at my denominators. Remember, when you add and subtract fractions, they just stay the same. So this is going to be 36c. Now, remember, you're not done here. What you need to do is you need to take the square root of the numerator, which I made a mistake again. That should have been an 81. So you want to take the square root of 81 all over the square root of 36c. So the square root of 81 is just 9. And the square root of 36, you have to look for the square root, which is 6. But you just have that radical c hanging out there. And remember, you can't just have that a radical in the denominator. So you need to rationalize it by taking the square root, multiplying both of them by the square root of c. So that is going to give me 9 square root c all over 6c. You then, last step, look at your 9 and your 6's. You see if you can divide them, which we can reduce them. That would be 3 over 2. And I just have the radical c over c. Remember, you can't simplify these because one of them is in the one of them is a radical and one of them is not. So therefore, you cannot take the square root of them. All right, guys, if you have any questions on any of these on the lessons, please feel free to email me or your teacher.